Has God ever spoken to you? I don't mean in a crazy way that hearing voices in your head sort of thing. I mean really, in your heart. Have you ever sensed God directing you or guiding you or speaking into your situation? Have you ever felt a prompting from the Holy Spirit to share an encouraging word with someone who's down and out, or to give an unexpected gift to someone in need? Have you ever been prompted to share your faith or to take a bold step that you never saw coming? God uses all sorts of means to speak to us. First and foremost, the Bible, and then secondary, so that we can hear from God in prayer through our circumstances, through the wise counsel of our friends, and even through unique, miraculous situations. The Bible is full of that kind of thing, right? If God speaks to you, or when God speaks to you, what is your answer going to be? John Avant is going to offer us a few words of encouragement from the book of Isaiah.
Sometimes it's just hard to hear God. Our pain clouds His purpose, our sin blurs our vision, and these days the noise is constant. On top of the incessant political wrangling and the time demands shouting from every direction, there's always the whirlwind of digital voices whispering and calling, voices never heard before in history until our times. It can be hard to hear God. But doesn't it make sense that when it's hard to hear God, these are the times we need to hear Him most? In the Bible, God has spoken, and God speaks now, and He will speak tomorrow. That's the miracle of the Scriptures. And God's not caught off guard by times like these. 2,760 years ago, a lonely Jewish man wrote these words in the book that bears his name, Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. The tragic death of the greatest king since Solomon left a gap that no one could fill. So the people began to listen to any voice loud enough to be heard, and the culture began to collapse. There was political tension, racial tension, economic tension, and military threats. Fear and anxiety reigned. Sound familiar? Does this feel like the year that the King has died in your life, in our times? In the midst of all that noise, one man sought to hear the only voice that really mattered, the voice of the true King of everything. And that King spoke, and he told Isaiah that he was enough, that he was high and lifted up above all the noise, but also that he understood Isaiah, and he understood what he faced. The word lifted up in the Hebrew Bible is a phenomenal word. It is used in other places in Isaiah to mean the one who bends down and lifts something up and carries it away, such as our own sin. Our God says that He will act. He's not a passive God. Isaiah comments on the fact that the train of the robe of God Himself, of the great King, filled the whole temple. Now, why does that matter? Well, the temple was about 2 football fields wide, side by side. And everyone in those days knew that any ancient king, when he conquered another king, he cut off the hem, the train of that king's robe, and sewed it onto his own. And so the longer the train of the robe of the king, the greater the conqueror that he was. Isaiah looks at his king, at his God, and he knows this king conquers everything. And then God showed Isaiah that Isaiah was not enough, not on his own. Isaiah looks around at everything happening in the temple. There's smoke, there's noise, there's angelic creatures shouting, holy, 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 and the whole place is shaking, and Isaiah is overwhelmed and astonished, and he says, woe is me. Jesus used the word woe 27 times in the New Testament. A Jewish rabbi named Benjamin Bleck says the word woe means all the discomfort of the present, all the pain of the past, and all the fear of the future rolled into one. And Isaiah sees all of that in his day and says, woe is me, I'm wrecked, I'm ruined, I'm broken, I have no hope, I can't do this. But then God shows him a miracle. God shows him that all of his sin, all of his woe has been taken away. Isn't that what you need? Isn't it a miracle? Isn't that what you need? Every time God speaks, it's a miracle. You know, God hasn't changed in 2,760 years. He speaks now to you like He did to Isaiah. Do you hear Him? from His Word and through His Spirit, He says to you, I'm with you in this. I'm enough and I have overcome. And your sin and your shame is gone. It's been atoned for. It's taken away. I don't even see it anymore. God says, I'm working miracles in your life, whether you see them or not. I'm working. I'm speaking. And every time God speaks, He waits for our answer. God spoke to Isaiah, and Isaiah said, here am I, send me. God, let me be the one. He didn't even know where God wanted him to go, but he said, let me go with you. And as God speaks that invitation to you today, how will you answer? At Life Action, we lead multi-day events for churches. We send in teams to help individuals and families and churches just stop and take a holy pause and say yes to God. At one of those events recently, I was with one of our teams, and I was walking outside the worship center, and I glanced inside the prayer room. They had a glass window, and I noticed that there was an elderly man praying. And the next night he was there, the next night he was there, every night he was there. At the end of that week, I waited for him to come out, and I thanked him for praying every night for what God was doing in our conference. He smiled at me, and in a voice I can only describe as a croaky whisper, he explained to me that he used to be a pastor, but he lost his voice to cancer. And he said, you know, I can't preach anymore, but I can pray. And he said, so I come in this prayer room while others are listening to the preaching, and I talk to God on their behalf. And then he said something I'll never forget. With a smile on his face and tears in his eyes, he said, because God still hears my voice. No matter what you face, He hears your voice. And if you cut through the noise and really listen, you will hear His voice too.
So, are you listening to God? And when you hear Him, are you responsive? Let's make it personal. Am I astonished by God, excited and expectant about the things He will say to me? Have I ever offered my own yes to God, the way Isaiah did? When God speaks, are you attentive to His voice? When was the last time He spoke to you? Lord, give us the ears to hear what your Spirit wants to say to us today.